Confusion and chaos today for more than 2 million federal workers. Many of them received an email over the weekend from the Office of Personnel Management titled, "What did you do last week?" telling them they have until midnight tonight to respond. With Elon Musk tweeting, failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Although the official email did not include that particular threat, today at the White House, President Trump called the email a genius way of rooting out employees who were not doing their jobs.
I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people. Please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Now, the ultimatum from Musk does appear to be facing some pushback from inside the administration. More than half a dozen departments and agencies, including the FBI, the State Department, the Defense Department, the National Security Agency, they're telling their employees they're telling them to pause or not respond to that email. But the president today downplaying any disagreement, saying those agencies were just protecting employees whose jobs include classified or sensitive information. Meanwhile, the White House is orchestrating major shakeups in leadership at both the Pentagon and the FBI. President Trump announced late Friday that he was firing Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, along with several top officers from the Navy and the Air Force and top military lawyers. The president is also naming conservative podcaster and former Fox News host Dan Bongino as deputy FBI director, a job typically held by a career FBI agent. Bongino has never worked for the FBI. With me now are NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hillyard and NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. Vaughn, I'll start with you here. The president seems to support this Saturday email we saw. What do we know about what the consequences will be or won't be for not responding to this email?
We know very little, and I guess the President of the United States, you could say, had an opportunity there in the Oval Office to make clear what the consequences would be, but did not. Instead, he complimented the work of Elon Musk and DOGE. And we should know that this has been 48 hours of ongoing questions around this, when on Saturday it was President Trump in a social media post who suggested that Elon Musk should be more aggressive in his DOGE efforts. Hours later, that's when Elon Musk put out a social media post on X saying that government workers would be getting an email that they had to respond with 5 bullet points about what they accomplished in the last week. And if they failed to do so, it'd be considered an automatic resignation. But when that actual email came out on Saturday night to the thousands of government workers around the country, it didn't say anything about resignation, and it didn't say they must respond by midnight tonight. It said that they simply asked them to respond by midnight tonight. Fast forward on Sunday, multiple agencies and departments told their employees they did not have to respond. And that leads us here to today with outstanding questions as to exactly what the consequences are come tomorrow for those workers who did not respond, and what the departments and agencies, and the first sign of some division with Elon Musk and DOGE, where that goes in the future as well.
And Vaughn, I understand you're learning a little bit more about how DOGE will assess the responses that they get from workers to this particular email. What do we know about that process?
Right. There is an AI capacity that they are seeking to use. Essentially, emails that are sent in, it'll go through the data of the context of emails that are returned. And as part of all of this is working towards having an understanding for DOGE's sake, what type of work is being done and the significance of the roles of workers that are at play. Of course, Elon Musk has not been shy about his determination to put either on administrative leave or terminate thousands more federal workers that have already not been done so at this point in time. And we heard even from President Trump at CPAC, that annual conservative conference just outside of Washington, D.C., him celebrate the terminations of thousands of bureaucrats, as he said, and has indicated that he intends to do even more in order to cut the government spending in terms of at least the amount that is paid on the workforce around the country.
And not just more, Vaughn. The president has encouraged Elon Musk to be more aggressive with the work that he's doing. Was this email a part of that effort, or is there any indication of what might come next year?
This absolutely is. And this is where I think, again, the Oval Office head nod from Donald Trump about Elon Musk's efforts is very much another implicit approval of his efforts. And I think this is where you get at for the departments and agency heads, from Kash Patel to Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, that on one hand, the Office of Personnel Management, in a statement this weekend, said that it would ultimately be the determination of the agencies and departments on how they respond to these emails that are sent back from workers. At the same time, you have Elon Musk clearly indicating, after President Trump's remarks here this afternoon, that he believes that, in fact, what he says should go, and that would mean termination. So whether that ultimately comes to fruition, or whether in the case of the Health and Human Services Department, for instance, which told its employees it must respond to the email, whether those individuals are terminated through, quote, automatic resignation, I think those are a lot of those outstanding questions here. But so far, 1.5 months in, Elon Musk has effectively been given an axe to go and do what he so pleases. And President Trump has given him that runway to execute on it.
All right, Vaughn Hillyard for us here in Washington today. Vaughn, thank you. Let's turn to Ken Dilanian now. And Ken, I know you've been listening to the conversation we were having about this OPM email over the weekend. You have some new reporting?
A bit of new reporting, yeah. We've obtained an email from the Justice Department to its workforce that essentially says that OPM told a meeting of human resource officers across the government that this survey is in fact voluntary, and that anyone who fails to fill it out is not at risk of losing their job. So that's being seen as a significant break, obviously, with what Elon Musk tried to dictate in terms of this survey.
Yeah, just another twist and turn. This is constantly happening. Let's talk a little bit about this new FBI deputy director, Dan Bongino. Well, first, let's talk about the deputy director position, the responsibilities that fall to that person.
Right. It's not a job most Americans have spent any time considering, but it's a really important job. Some FBI officials tell me it's more important than the director, because the deputy actually runs the bureau, is actually in charge of operations, supervises the special agents who are in charge of the field offices, has hands on some of the most sensitive intelligence in the government. And traditionally, for 117 years of the FBI's existence, that job has been held by a career special agent and is not a politically appointed job. So this really changes things. Dan Bongino was a former Secret Service agent, has never worked at the FBI, and also has a history of making inflammatory statements about the FBI, called it irredeemably corrupt, accused it of lying about different things. And so there's a lot of consternation among my sources.
So I'm curious to know if you've gotten any insight about how he came to be the person selected for that position, and then, of course, what the reaction has been from people at the FBI to this appointment.
So there's a lot of mystery on that. I don't have good fidelity on how he came to be selected, but what we do know is that the FBI Agents Association says that FBI Director Kash Patel assured them that he was in favor of that job going to a career agent. Obviously, that's not what happened, so it's unclear whether that was foisted on Patel or what went on there. In terms of reaction, look, really dismay and consternation and concern among people across the political spectrum within the FBI. The FBI is a conservative organization. It's not about politics. It's about their concern that this appointment erodes the traditional independence of the FBI, threatens to make it essentially a political tool of the Trump administration.
All right, we'll be watching for new developments on that. Ken Dilanian, thank you.
You bet.
Let's turn to the Pentagon now. The Defense Department says about 5,400 of its probationary workers will be let go starting this week. Those are workers who have been with the department for less than 2 years. A hiring freeze is also going to be implemented. As we mentioned, that comes as President Trump fired General C.Q. Brown as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on Friday, and says that he plans to nominate Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Caine to replace him. NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kube joins me now to walk us through this. So, Courtney, have you been able to learn anything about why General Brown was fired before the end of his term?
No, we haven't actually. So, I mean, look, the reality is, Aaron, we've not gotten any actual reason for why he or the other general officers and flag officers were fired late on a Friday night. But the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, in his book and in interviews before he became Secretary of Defense, was very honest about it and was very forthcoming about the fact that he thought that General Brown should be fired. And he pointed to his support for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives during his time as the Air Force Chief of Staff, and then even into his time as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. But, Aaron, what's really important to point out here is General Brown, in both of those jobs, and frankly, in his previous jobs in command, the military is run by civilian leaders. That is the law. So when there is a policy that is implemented, the military leaders, yes, they give their best advice, but they carry out those policies. That was what he was doing in these jobs. So if, in fact, he was carrying out diversity initiatives or he was implementing the policies, those were the ones that were provided by the civilian leadership at the time. Now, he's being replaced, as we saw there in those pictures in that video, by Lieutenant General Dan Caine. Why that is so important is General Caine is actually retired. He's a three-star who retired December 31st, 2024. He was serving at the CIA in his last job, but he's had a number of deployments in combat, including one in 2018 and 2019, where he served in a senior commanding role in the Joint Special Operations community in Iraq. That was when he got to meet then President Donald Trump during Trump's first term. And we have heard from President Trump since then, including on the campaign trail last year, speaking about General Caine. He likes to call him Raisin Caine, which is his call sign from the Air Force, and speaking very highly of him, in fact, giving him some credit for the ultimate defeat of ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. What's important to point out, though, Aaron, General Caine retired, so that means there's some bureaucratic and administrative hurdles that the Pentagon is going to have to hurdle in order to get him confirmed. But in addition to that, he has never held some of the legally mandated jobs required to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That is either being the vice chairman, a combatant commander, or one of the service chiefs. But it is possible for the president to waive those requirements if he sees it is in the national interest, Aaron.
So, Courtney, a lot of moving parts there. What's been the reaction inside the Pentagon or inside the military community at large to these changes?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, there's not a lot of surprise. We were, like I said, Secretary Hegseth and President Trump and those around him have spoken very openly about their belief that General C.Q. Brown should be fired as chairman. In addition to that, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, we've also been hearing for some time that she could be let go from her job as well. But some of the others were a little bit of a surprise. And the one the firings from Friday night that really have caused the most waves, I would say, around here are the JAGs. So these are the top attorneys for each of the services, Army, Navy, and the Air Force JAGs. They were fired. Why that is causing so much concern around here is because of something that Secretary Hegseth said on Fox News on Sunday, when he said that generals and admirals needed to be removed if they could potentially essentially be road bumps or roadblocks to a policy that the president wanted to carry out. That has people around here really talking. Now, I need to say, all of these people, this is all within the law. President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, they have the right to have the military leaders in these jobs that they choose. But the manner in which this is done and the fact that there has not been any real reason, merit-based reason for these individuals to be fired, that's one of the things that has people here at the Pentagon talking, Aaron.
And that seems to be the through line in a lot of what we've been seeing happen over the last month, Courtney. I do want to ask you about your exclusive reporting on this potential shift in coming with the U.S. military presence in Africa in particular. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so U.S. Africa Command, it's been a command since about 2008. It was fully operational then. There is some consideration right now by the Trump administration to essentially eliminate Africa Command and to fold it in under U.S. European Command. Now, Aaron, that is where it started. As I said, 2007, 2008, that was when Africa Command became a combatant command. And before that, it fell basically under EUCOM and a little bit under Central Command, the Middle East Command. The idea here is they could move it back under European Command as a three-star command or sort of a sub-command of EUCOM. The concern here is that if they do that, it would make it easier for the Trump administration to pull some troops out of Africa Command. They wouldn't have a four-star necessarily pushing back against it. And that if the U.S. military's presence on the continent is decreased, it could open a vacuum for some adversaries like China or Russia to move in and take additional land or increase their influence on the African continent. But the reality is there are other people who are saying, look, this could break down in some of their bureaucracy and may not be the worst idea after all, Aaron.
All right. Courtney Kube for us at the Pentagon today. Courtney, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.